I'd like to welcome everybody to our 7th Applied U webinar, which is sponsored by Bentley University and the Association for Applied and Clinical Sociology. My name is Gary David, and I am the immediate past president of the AACS. And one of the main reasons that we do these webinars is to provide professional development and educational opportunities for our members and other interested parties alike. And one of the great things about topics like today's is that we are pulling from both an academic crowd, those who are going to school, studying sociology, those who are sociologists and looking how to apply it. And I also know we have people in the marketing and customer experience world who are also signed up for this podcast. So it's a great mix of different perspectives and experiences, which is what we like here. And we are fortunate to have Ashley Lumpkin from Anthem. Is it Anthem Insurance or just Anthem Inc.? Anthem Inc.?
Anthem Inc. is the umbrella company that owns multiple insurance companies.
Gotcha. So Anthem Inc. And Ashley is the manager of market strategy and insights, but soon we'll have another title, which is equally as exciting as that one. And she's going to speak on how she applies sociology and sociological perspectives and insights to customer insights and experience. This is a topic very, very close to my heart as well. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please provide them in the chat box, which is located towards the bottom of the Zoom screen. And Ashley, if you like, we can hold questions till the end of the webinar or take them anytime. It's up to you. How would you like to do it?
As they come is fine.
Okay, as they come, you can post the questions and I'll pose them to Ashley. And we are recording the webinar, and a copy of it will be uploaded to our AACS Applied U YouTube site, which has other content, including our 6 previous webinars. I will also send out an announcement and link once the webinar is up on YouTube. And you can, as I said, find past webinars there as well. And our next webinar will be next month. We try to do this monthly. We haven't set it up yet, but as soon as we set it up, I will send out an announcement and let everyone know. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ashley.
Great. Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. I am excited to be here with all of you today. So I wanted to start with a little bit of background of who I am. So I straddle the line a little bit between academic sociologist and applied sociologist in the business world. So as Gary mentioned, I'm currently the manager of market strategy and insights, soon to be director of marketing strategy. I also teach at John Tyler Community College. I've been teaching there for 10 years. I teach sociology, intro, sex and gender, marriage and family, several courses. And I am also the newly elected vice president of the board of directors for Safe Harbor, which is a local nonprofit domestic violence shelter. And I work there building the outcomes and metrics model for program evaluation on all the work that they do there. So that's where I'm coming from. My master's is in sociology. I have a post-bac in applied research, and I've been working for the last 10 years in the customer experience space. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about applying sociological theory and methods to the customer experience space. So we're going to talk about how to recognize market opportunities. We're going to talk about developing and testing products. And we're going to talk about how to identify target audiences and opportunities. So that's a little bit about me and what we're going to talk about today. So first, we're going to talk about market assessment. So how do you find opportunities in the market? So you'll hear lots and lots and lots of companies talk about innovation, big buzzword. Everybody wants to be innovative. And how do you do that? It's difficult, right? So the CEO says, we're an innovative company, and then they hire someone who they give a lofty title like Senior Vice President of Innovation, and then they hire other people and they say, okay, we're going to be innovative. And then there's a lot of looking around on how do we do that. So my suggestion in my experience has been the first place to start is by doing a market assessment. So what's a market assessment? It's looking at the landscape of the market that's out there, what the trends are today. So I work for a health insurer, as I mentioned, and so we're going to look at market health trends. We're going to look at health insurance trends, what's going out in the health insurance markets. So things like value-based care, Medicare for all, that's a big one we're all talking about right now, health trends, social determinants of health. These are all things that we're studying and looking at in the marketplace. And we're going to pull together all the information that we have from secondary research that's out there, from secondary analysis of other data sets that are out there, from primary research that our company does, past research, and from ongoing tracking studies that our company does, that we go in and do secondary post analysis on. And we're going to try there to identify gaps. So that's the point. You want to identify gaps that exist. So you're going to bump up everything that's happening in the marketplace against what is out there in the market, what products, services are being offered today. And then you're going to find out where there's an opportunity, where there's a gap, and where you can fill it. So that's the whole point of the market assessment. So you really want to make sure that you're doing a very thorough analysis of what's out there. You want to make sure you have a specific goal in mind. You want to make sure that you are identifying what space you want to innovate in. So just saying, let's innovate is too big. You're going to end up boiling the ocean. You're going to look at everything and be overwhelmed with way too much data. So you want to say, we want to innovate in patient experience, or we want to innovate in the digital experience, or we want to innovate in, the website experience, which I guess is part of the digital experience, but you want to pick a very defined space and look in there. You want to look at all the resources from the entire market that you're looking at. You want to define your market. So for my company, our market is very largely geographically defined. You can also define it by different demographics. So if we were looking at a Medicare product, for example, so we're going to be looking at your 65 plus population. And you want to be looking again against benchmarks, industry benchmarks, and health best practices, or best practices. In my case, it would be health best practices. And you want to look at what your competitors are doing. So you want to make sure that competitive analysis is part of your market assessment. So that sounds well and good. But again, right now, the way I've described it, it just seems like you're going out there searching for all the information you can find, and that can be overwhelming. So there are several different models that we've used, or I've used, to help synthesize the information in a way that is manageable. These models take into account environmental factors, competitive factors, future trends in the market, your space, your company space in the market, puts them all together and helps you kind of make sense of all the information so that you can help identify gaps together. So I've put on the screen a couple of examples. We've got the 4 corners, we've got the Porter's 5 forces, the SWOT analysis, and the 7 Ps of marketing, which I use a lot in my new role as in marketing strategy. So again, filling these out, and these are not proprietary. You can Google these online. There are all sorts of how-tos on how to use these and utilize these to help you. But these are really great resources to help you synthesize the data and make sense of it. and help you identify where there are areas for opportunity, for growth and expansion and innovation in your marketplace. So I'm going to pause for a second. Are there any questions on defining your market and market opportunity?
I don't see any in our chat box, but one of the things I would ask, or one of the things I talk about with my students, is how, applying innovation, what I call ethnography, what I call innovation ethnography, as this approach to kind of incorporate a lot of different data streams, into a more comprehensive view. And in your role as a sociologist, especially probably talk with people who are in marketing analytics, do you find a propensity to focus more on the numbers rather than actually talk to people?
I always include talking to people. I like to start with talking to internal stakeholders. So I want to talk to, if we're trying to understand opportunities in the Medicare market, I want to talk to the VP of Medicare sales and those types of folks in the area. And I want to understand from them where they see the opportunities and what barriers they're running up against. That's always where I'm going to start. Yes, the marketing analytics guys are always going to want to throw the numbers at you. The business intelligence guys are always going to want to throw the numbers at you, and numbers are good. But you definitely, I think, need to have that human touch and that experience face-to-face. I think especially when you're talking about sales and account management and interactions with clients and what clients are looking for going forward, I think it's really important that you're getting in touch with some of those folks and asking them, what are we missing? What is the industry missing? What do you need that we're not defining? Now, of course, you can't ask them that directly. You can't ask consumers to ideate for you. That's just a little too much. But, bringing in focus groups and in-depth interviews and guiding them towards what are the gaps in the industry that you would benefit from if a company could fill from you is always going to give you better insights than just looking at a bunch of numbers, in my experience.
Great. Love it. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay. So now you've done your market analysis and you've identified a gap and you're like, great, we've got this opportunity. Let's fill it with a product. And I say product, but it could be a program, it could be a service. It doesn't have to be a thing. I work in health insurance. We don't sell things. We sell services. So here you're looking for, you've identified kind of this white space, this empty blank space that you want to fill with a new or differentiated product or service. And now you want to take time and you want to ideate and figure out what that looks like. You want to test it. You want to refine it. You want to make sure that it's meeting the market needs and doing what you think it's going to do. Just because you have designed a product to meet a need does not mean that in actuality it is going to meet that need. Sometimes things don't work out the way we think they're going to. You want to make sure that you're testing the product with customers to look at reducing abrasion. You want to make sure that this is something that customers are using, that they are excited about. You want to make sure that this is something that customers, it's easy. There's a great book called The Effortless Experience, which I really like, and it's all about how the most important metric in business is not satisfaction with a product or service or program, but effort, how easy it is. And it's based in behavioral economics, is that people are going to do what's easiest. And And you want to make sure that you're defining your success metrics, and you want to make sure that you're looking at what is successful and that you are designing a product that is going to meet those success metrics. Do we have a question come in?
No, actually, I just typed in that The Effortless Experience is a great book because I've read the two, and I'm constantly referring to it when I give people talks, comparing between like a wow experience or trying to wow people, then giving them an experience that is more frictionless and also meets their normative expectations. You know, just just meeting what I expect and what I need, and not trying to do more than that, and making it more complicated than necessary.
Exactly. Yeah. For a long time in customer experience, there was, talking about wow moments, and delighting the customer was kind of the catchphrase, and that's what everyone was going after. And since then, there's been a lot of research that I think has really said that's not really what customers want. They want it to be easy and simple, and for you to do your job and do it right the first time. And that's what they want. They don't want wow experiences.
And as sociologists, we know any deviation from a norm is still a deviation. And it's still something that needs to be dealt with and thought about. And oftentimes people are just looking for experiences or services where they don't have to think. They just want to be able to process and do. And even though you're trying your best to create a great moment, that great moment can be distracting enough to cause them to be uncomfortable and have to pause and think and process and think about how to react versus just do.
Right, exactly. Okay. So I can't emphasize this enough. So before you do any product testing, before you start thinking about the product or where you want to go, you want to understand the business case. And this, I think, is something that is very different coming from academics into an applied setting. And it's very, very important for success in an applied setting. And believe it or not, it is not always done well, and sometimes not at all by the business folks. Sometimes they're just saying, hey, we've got this great idea. It's going to fill this gap. It's new and innovative. Let's go do it. And that's where they start. And that is a recipe for disaster. So you want to make sure that you're understanding all the business inputs. And one of the first things that you want to do from a sociological perspective is you want to identify the target market. So they've said, hey, we've got this great, let's just say, mobile app that we're going to start using with our consumers. Well, who is this mobile app for? Who's going to buy this mobile app, or who's going to download this mobile app? What types of different people are going to use this mobile app? Are there different features within the mobile app that are targeted at different segments? How do we promote this mobile app? How do we sell features within the mobile app to different people? How do we get people to sign up for the mobile app? You really want to make sure that you're identifying your target market. Now, to begin with, you might just have some demographics. You might just start out with some SES demographics. But what you're really going to want to understand from a theoretical standpoint is, why did you choose this market? And that's really going to be important to keep reminding the business folks as you go through a project. In my experience, they will often lose sight of the why and get so bogged down into the how and the what's next. And but you really want to focus them on the why. And because remember, that we're sociologists, we're talking about people. And sociologists in applied settings, in my opinion, are there to advocate for the people, to be the voice of the people. So if you're going out there and you're making a product for the Medicaid population, you really want to make sure that you understand the Medicaid population, and not just, what percentage of the federal poverty level qualifies you for Medicaid, but what does the Medicaid population look like? What percentage of them have smartphones if you're looking at an app? What percentage of them use their smartphones for healthcare decisions? But not just that, what challenges do they face in life? Are they putting off going to the doctor because they can't afford it? Is there no time to go to the doctor because of competing priorities in life and taking care of family members and all sorts of different competing priorities? You really want to make sure that you're not just identifying your target audience, but understanding your target audience. And I'm going to talk more in the next section about some tools that you can use to help bring the population to life for your business partners, because that's going to be really important. But you want to identify your target audience. And then the next step is you want to pinpoint the behavior change. And this is a little into the behavioral economics area. What do you want the customer to do? So with anything, with a product, a program, a service, you want them to do something. You want them to buy something. You want them to lose weight. You want them to, you want them to, buy a certain channel package on cable. You want them to do something. So you want to identify what that behavior change is. Is it, again, enroll in a program, adopt a new product, change to a different product? Do you want them to just keep using your product? So you want to pinpoint the behavior change. Again, you don't want to just say, hey, we're going to put this new innovative thing out there. We want to pinpoint the behavior change. And then you want to go back to step one, identifying your target population, and you want to understand what is motivating my target population to make that behavior change. What is it about my target population that would make them want to do this? Are they experiencing some class stratification? Are they experiencing some sort of discrimination? Are they experiencing some isolation that we want them to overcome? You really want to understand, again, what are the social forces that they may have to overcome in order to make that behavior change. So again, this is where the social theory and really understanding the customer, and I can't hammer that point home hard enough. You've really got to understand your customer. You've got to understand them to help make that behavior change. And then step three, you want to understand your KPIs, your key performance indicators. You want to understand what you're measuring. Is it, again, I'll go back to apps. I'm working on an app now. So this is easy for me. Is it downloads? Is it in-app purchases? Is it click-throughs on the media plan? Is it, going through certain features? What is it you're trying to get people to do? Which kind of connects to the behavior change. You want to know how you're going to measure it. You want a measurement plan, and you want goals. Measurable goals. This is important. So up until now, you've been really on the qualitative ethnographic side of things, and now you're kind of shifting into the quantitative space. Are you doing a post satisfaction survey? Are you doing a pre-post? Are you doing UX measurement on the back end? Are you measuring abandonment rates at certain areas of the user experience to understand, this is just too hard and people aren't doing it? So here you really want to look at the experience by the numbers. And then from a purely business standpoint, you want to get your business partners to tell you the timing, the budget, the interactions with other products that may exist, and who the decision makers are, who has the final say on, yes, this is good to go, and who can, sign the little John Hancock and let something go out the door. Again, you would be surprised how often those things are unknown throughout a project. So I've put together a little bit of a roadmap on how to do product research and kind of the life cycle of it. So to start with, you're in this pre-ideation needs opportunity assessment area. So this is where you're looking at the segment that you want to focus on. So you've done your market analysis, you've identified a gap, you have identified a target population, and here you're really diving into that target population and trying to come up with an idea of how you can serve that target population, how your company can fill a need that target population has within your industry. You want to identify what problems you're trying to solve. It's very important. You want that to be very clear. You want to understand the needs of the population and how you can solve for them. So this is, again, very qualitative. There are some great companies out there. I'll do a plug for one. I work with a company called Ideas to Go, and they do a great ideation session where they bring in customers with business folks and bounce ideas off of each other and brainstorm. And they've selected these folks who are specifically very creative oriented. And they come together and brainstorm through certain ideas and how to meet a need and what the problems are, and then kind of pressure test it. Well, we can't do this because of X, Y, Z, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really a good time to make sure that you're exploring the opportunity as well as possible. You're doing some ethnography, you're talking to your customer population, talking. Key point. Again, we're still very qualitative at the beginning. And you're really understanding where the opportunity lies and maybe bouncing some ideas off of them and seeing what sticks and what sounds good. The next phase is concept screening. So here you have a couple of ideas that you've come up with. 8 to 10, 5 to 6 is better. A couple ideas that you're going to bake out a little bit. You're going to just get a general idea, and I'm talking about a one-pager, maybe a couple of screenshots, depending on what you're developing, and you want to pull it all together at a very high level and do some screening with, again, your target audience. Usually in my experience, I've used some agile research methods to try and do this, doing some online bulletin boards, online communities, so kind of quick little online surveys. Depending on how complex your target population is, you might want to do a full-blown customer quantitative study. It really depends not just on how complex your target population is and how many segments there are within it, but also how complex your concepts are. So I work in health insurance, and our concepts are usually pretty complex. In a lot of cases, we have to not only explain the concept that we're testing, but health insurance and how it works, and make sure that everyone's on the same page to begin with. So we do a lot of focus groups and one-on-one interviews to really make sure that everyone's on the same page and grounding. And we spend usually the first 10, 15, sometimes 20, depending on the population, minutes getting a good level set on health insurance, and then moving into, okay, now here's an idea or a couple of ideas. What do you think about the ideas? What resonates with you? What doesn't resonate with you, etc. So as you're doing this, your business partners, the guys, and when I say business partners, I mean the P&Ls, the folks who control the money and who are paying for the products, they're going to start developing their business case for why they should go forward with one product over another. So you guys are kind of working together to develop and make recommendations for one concept that really resonated well in the market, and this is business, so also has good revenue and op gain opportunities. And then the next part is really an iterative process. It's all about optimization and market testing. So you've got kind of your one idea. But remember, in the concept testing phase before, you just had this one pager, half-baked kind of idea. So now you've got to really fully bake your idea. And you want to make sure that it's getting really strong results and really strong testing. You really want to kick the tires on it in the marketplace. You want to make sure that you are doing some competitive analysis to make sure it's really different from what competitors are offering. You want to make sure you're doing some pricing analysis, whether it's a pricing elasticity study or a shopping cart exercise or something else, to make sure that you're really, Van Westerhouse, that's one thing about model, to make sure that you're really getting it priced effectively. If you're looking at different features within the product, again, I'll go back to a mobile app. If you're looking at whether there should be a chat feature or a point system, or if it should, connect with different websites or features, you might want to do a choice exercise, a conjoint, max diff, etc. You really want to test it. This is where you're refining, and this may be iterative. You might go through several forms of testing, and you should, though in my experience, the business doesn't always want to do that. It takes time and money. But you really want to make sure that you're testing this and getting it right. And again, you want to make sure that you're doing this amongst the right audience. And if you have several different segments of audiences you're trying to appeal to, you want to make sure you're getting it right for each audience. One size does not fit all. You want to make sure that if you are trying to build something for 6 different audiences, that you're prepared to position and build 6 different products. Questions? I know I saw a couple light ups in the chat.
No questions. One question was, will it be recorded? And it will be on YouTube. But one of the things I do want to point out, which is I find be working at a private business school and having no background in business myself, is all the jargon you're putting in there. And for many, and I think it's great. And I do understand it because I've worked at a business school for 19 years, but it's taken me a while. And so one of the things I want to point out is that for people who are sociologists or sociology students, or might be listening to this later about how do I do this work, I mean, it's not anything that you can't learn on the job. There are obviously classes in this, but one of the things I would recommend people do is, if they're interested in the kind of work you're laying out, is find those groups or associations or meetups or local networking, meetings where you'll find people doing this work, and you just, like any ethnography, you learn by listening, you learn by doing. Pricing elasticity, right, is not a terribly complicated concept that you couldn't pick up. And just because you're not in a business school or you don't have a business background, like a marketing background, doesn't mean you couldn't do this kind of work. And so for those who are listening and wondering what agile means, it's okay. Calm down, take a breath. You can learn. It's possible. All these things are things that, as with a sociology background, really does put you in a good position to do the kind of things that Ashley is talking about.
That is a great point, and I apologize. After a while, you don't even realize that you're speaking a different language. So Gary and I were chatting before we started recording. I do not have a business background. Like I said, I have a master's in sociology, and I do have a postbac in applied research, but applied social research, not business research. I learned all of this on the job. So that's how you learn. You do it. And if anyone has questions and wants to reach out to me, my contact information is in the back of this. Happy to help. There's a couple of great online classes, what are they called, MOOCs, on the Massively Open online courses, on product, what am I thinking? It'll come to me.
As you're thinking, another thing I would add people do is, especially for undergraduates or even master's students, if you're looking to do an internship, sociologists can do internships in more places than community organizations. Not that you shouldn't aspire to that, but by going out as a sociology major or a master's student, you can go do an internship in a marketing company or in a marketing group or in some kind of location like that. And what would be great about a sociologist doing that is that you'll be a unique person, because usually the people who take those internships are those who are majoring in those fields. But as a sociology student, you're going to bring a whole different toolkit, skill set, frame of reference that others are not going to have. And that actually makes you far more compelling, competitive, having, as we say in the business world, a greater value add than those who are all thinking the same because they've all had the same classes. And so going out and doing those internships in different kinds of contexts beyond the traditional sociology internships really will help you open up the range of possibilities you have for your post-school work in life.
And design thinking, that's what I was thinking, taking courses in design thinking,
right,
which I know Gary's a proponent of. So yes, definitely take those opportunities. All right. And so the last one I want to talk about is product positioning, which is what I'm doing in my new position. Gary mentioned I'm in marketing strategy, which I will point out, I was specifically recruited for because of my sociology background, my understanding of people. That's why my VP wanted me to be on the team. And she fought very hard to get me recruited on the team because of that background. So it is a well thought out background. So product positioning, what is this? This is all about knowing your audience. And this is about taking the product. So you've helped develop it. You've got it now, you've got it tested and you've, kicked the tires and it's pressure tested and it works and you're confident that your target audience is going to like it. Now you've got to get them to use it or buy it, right? So now you've got to create a compelling narrative around it. Now you've got to sell it, which I know doesn't sound too exciting. I know when I first went into marketing, I was like, oh, I gotta sell stuff. Who wants to sell stuff? It didn't really sound all that exciting to me. But when I really got into the process of how you position something, it's really about knowing people and knowing what's going to resonate with people. So you're doing this yes, for sales. You want to make sure the product launch is successful. You want to make sure sales are successful. And you want to make sure that you're providing a satisfactory experience and an effortless customer experience. But you want to reach beyond utility. You want to create more than just a tool or a thing or a service. You want to reach customers at an emotional level. And that's really what's going to resonate with customers. That's what's going to keep people coming back. That's what's going to create loyalty. That's what's going to keep your company top of mind. That's what's going to generate the most success, is when you can understand the motivations of people at an emotional level. And that takes a lot of understanding of people, not just, as Gary pointed out, looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. So this is what I was trying to think of before. This is the outline of design thinking. So if you are curious, I would go look up some design thinking. There's lots of courses online and some massively open online courses around design thinking. The first step, number one, I want you to notice up at top is empathy. Is develop empathy for whom you are designing. You want to understand your target audience. You want to understand the person, and not just who they are, not how much money they make and where they live and are they married and do they have kids. You want to understand, what are their goals? What are their aspirations? What's holding them back? What are the societal influences that are pushing them? What are those macro functions that are influencing their everyday lives? What are those micro interactions that are influencing their daily lives? What are their social networks look like? You want to understand all of that. And then you go through the steps of defining their needs and opportunities and ideating and prototyping and testing, which were the methods that we talked about in the previous section. So you're defining the who. Who are you positioning this product for? You want to take and ideally, okay, so I will start with ideally in innovation, real innovation. You would start how I started the presentation, with market assessment. We found a gap. We're going to create something to fill the gap, and then we're going to position it so that the users will feel compelled to purchase or use whatever product we've designed. That doesn't happen usually in business. Usually someone finds something shiny and new that someone has told them is innovative, and they say, okay, we're going to do this. So now you, as a sociologist, have to go out and find, okay, who is this product for? So now we're kind of going backwards. So you've got this product, and the first thing you want to do is you want to understand what it does. And it's really, really understand what it does. You want to use it yourself. You want to make sure if it's a product that you can use. It makes me think of, if you've seen that movie, What Women Want, with Mel Gibson, and he's trying on the pantyhose and the lipstick in the movie, and he's falling over in the bathroom. That's what you want to do. You want to try the products. You want to get a sense of what it's like. You want to understand what need the product is filling, and you want to understand who needs the product. Who is this product for? And your job, as I mentioned before, is to represent this audience, to the business owners and the product developers. You want to be their voice and make sure that you're advocating for them as they're developing the product. And there are a couple of customer experience tools that you can use to do this. And I know Gary has talked about these on previous Applied U webinars that they've done. You can create customer personas, journey maps, customer segmentations. I've provided a couple snapshots of ones that I've created here at Anthem, but it's really understanding who they are, who the target audience is, and what they do, what their life looks like. You really want to bring that person, that audience to life. So the persona is to put a face on it. You really want to make sure that it's something that you can relate to. And as you're having discussions and developing products and ideation sessions, you'll find that if you've created a compelling persona, they'll start referring to the user as the name of whatever your persona is. So I think this persona I've used is Stephanie. So people will start saying, well, what about, when Stephanie goes to do this, does Stephanie find that easy? And that's really, then you've done a good job. And then they're really identifying with the user. And then you want to lay out all the decisions and the steps that the user has to go through on their journey to making a purchase or a user decision, and that's the journey map. And then the segment profiles is all the different types of users or purchasers or customers that may be interested in this type of product. And this is really going to provide a holistic look at who your audience is, and that's really important, and that's going to rely on not just the numbers, but also the talking to customers. The best personas and segmentations are based on demographic, attitudinal, and behavioral data, all three. A lot of people and a lot of companies will create segmentations just off demographics, and they'll fall short. They're not actionable. You've really got to make sure that you're looking at the whole person when you're segmenting them and personifying them in order to be successful. And then you want to identify the how and the why. And I went back and forth on this, and because this is kind of an iterative process, I put these two together. So you need to understand how the product works and how customers interact with it. And then you want to position the product to address the customer's needs. And this kind of goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you've got something that works. And you'll do this through a couple of different ways. Not all of these are research-based, though I highly advocate using experience design and user experience research to do this, but doesn't always happen. But you at least want to bring in users and those in your target audience to look at and play around with prototypes and give their feedback, looking at user flows, process maps, journeys, doing the customer narratives is really important. You want to look at the motivators and the barriers and look at the need fulfillment. Is this product fulfilling the need that we think it's going to fulfill? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? I mentioned earlier. So there are all these different types of ways that you're trying to make sure that the product works the way that it's supposed to, works in a way that is easy and makes sense for the user, but also fills the need. If it doesn't fill the need, if it doesn't work within the motivations of the consumer, and if it doesn't break through the barriers, they're not going to use it, or they're not going to purchase it, or they're not going to enroll in the program, and it's not going to be successful. And you can't know that unless you understand all of the inner workings behind how people and segments or groups within society work. And that's where you're putting all your sociological background to work. And I know we're running out of time, so do we have any questions? I think that was my last one. Yes, that was my last one.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. And I want to touch on something that you just mentioned, because one of the pushbacks I've gotten from sociologists, for instance, is when I'm at a conference or something like that, and I say that I do consulting work with businesses, there can be a tendency to people look at that as selling out, right? Like you're not being a real sociologist because you're helping people, or companies make profit. And I think one of the points that you were raising, which is really, really essential, is this work of advocacy in your role. And I have an engagement right now with a company around customer experience and employee experience. And I described it as almost a mission of mercy, trying to help workers actually create better workplaces where their skills and competencies and abilities and know-how is valued differently than it has been in the past. And that there's a lot of sociology to that. So, number one, do you have that experience when you talk to sociologists and you're like, oh, you work for the man? And number two, the element of advocating for those whose voices otherwise wouldn't be heard.
Yes. So yeah, I do get that kind of you've sold out type of feedback from other sociologists. But I sincerely believe that my job is to advocate for the customers. And I work for a big company. I work for a big for-profit company. And their number one goal is to make money for shareholders. But my number one goal is to make sure that the customers, the members, the health insurance members are having a good experience and getting what they need. And I strongly believe that it's my job to take the voice of the customer and take it to those who make decisions within the business and advocate on behalf of them and make sure the best that I can. I mean, they don't always listen to me, but to the extent that I can, to make sure that business decisions are based on customer needs, so that when they're trying to roll out a new program or prior authorization initiative that's going to deny a service for tens of thousands of people, I can bring them narratives and stories and interviews I've done about how heartbreaking and crushing that is and how devastating that is to people's lives. And maybe I can change their minds. And maybe I can change that policy and influence that from the inside.
Well, I completely appreciate that perspective. I think it's an important one for sociologists to hear, aspiring sociologists, because if you're not in that role doing the work that Ashley's doing, someone else is going to be. And that person who's there might not have the same kind of educational experiences which provide a certain kind of worldview or compass to really advocate for customers and others in those kinds of important ways. And in that way, a sociologist or Ashley's job isn't just about market, customer insights. It's about customer advocacy. Mm-hmm. And as one of my friends who does customer experience, he used to bring a chair into meetings that had the word customer on it. And people would say, well, what's that chair for? And he would say, that's so the customer always has a seat at the table. And we always think about the customer, symbolically at least, when we're making these decisions, because at the end of the day, it's about the people whose lives we're impacting with the decisions we're making here. So, being a sociologist in that and having that opportunity is probably the greatest impact you can have in so many people's lives. Any other questions from our attendees? Well, we're coming up against the hour, so I will say to Ashley, thank you so much. This has really been fantastic, and it really does pull together so many of the streams that we've talked about on the Applied U webinars regarding both, entrepreneurial activity and design and experience design and sociology, and it really did a really great job of connecting so many threads that we've covered. And I hope it does help provide both sociologists an idea of what can be done with sociology, and also people in customer insights and customer experience to say, hey, we should have a sociologist on our staff. Let's go find one. We need more Ashleys. How do we find more Ashleys? And any final words you want to share with anybody?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And, please feel free to reach out to me. I've got, both my email addresses up here, or, hit me up on Twitter, and I am happy to answer questions, offer guidance, anything that I can do to help. Definitely want to be there to support fellow sociologists.
Great. And I want to thank everybody who signed up attended during the streaming, and also are going to listen to it later on. Please make sure you check out our other webinars at the Applied U YouTube site. You can just go into YouTube and type in Applied U and it'll come right up. Also go to the AACS website at aacsnet.net for information regarding our upcoming annual meeting, which will be in Portland, Oregon in October. You can also see the call for papers if you are in the Portland area, you want to make the journey out to participate in our conferences and our workshops. And again, we will have another webinar in June. We're in the process of setting it up right now. Once we get firm details, I'll make sure to share it out with everybody who signed up for this webinar and our past webinars. And again, thanks to Ashley, and thank you everybody for taking part in this webinar. Take care.
Thank you.